The kitchen faucet had been dripping for 3 weeks. Not the kind of steady drip that drives you crazy, but that irregular plink, plink, plink that somehow made it worse. I was sprawled under the sink at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, wrench in hand, muttering about cheap hardware store washers, when Jennifer burst through the door. "Tom, I need to tell you something." Her voice had that rehearsed quality I'd learned to recognize over 8 years of marriage. The same tone she used when explaining why she'd spent $400 on a purse or forgotten to mention her mother was coming for the weekend. "Can it wait? I'm trying to fix this thing before it floods the kitchen." I twisted the valve stem, hoping the washer would cooperate for once in its miserable existence. "It can't wait." Something in her voice made me pause. I slid out from under the sink and looked at her properly. Jennifer stood in the doorway, wearing her good jeans and the blouse I'd bought her for Christmas. Her hands were shaking, which was unusual. Jennifer's hands never shook. She was the kind of woman who could thread a needle during an earthquake. "What's going on, Jen?" She took a deep breath and sat down at our kitchen table, the one we'd bought at a yard sale when we first got married, back when we thought mismatched chairs were charming instead of embarrassing. "I'm pregnant." I set the wrench down carefully. That's great news, honey. We've been trying for... It's not yours." The words hung in the air like smoke from a grease fire. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline or the explanation that would make this make sense. When neither came, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not heartbreak. That would come later. This was more like the moment when you realize you've been driving with the parking brake on for miles. "What do you mean it's not mine?" Jennifer reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She smoothed it out on the table between us like she was presenting evidence in court. "I'm 11 weeks along. The dates, they don't match up with us. We haven't been intimate in 3 months." She was right about that. Our bedroom had become a polite, sterile place where we slept on opposite sides of a king-size bed and said goodnight like roommates. "Then whose is it?" She looked down at her hands. "Danny's. My brother Danny." "Of course." "Danny," I repeated, testing the name in my mouth like I was trying to identify a strange taste. "My brother Danny. It happened 3 times. The Marriott downtown on March 15th, the Holiday Inn by the airport on March 22nd, and that bed and breakfast in Millfield on April 3rd. The precision was what got to me, not the betrayal, though that stung, but the fact that she'd written it all down. Dates, locations, probably times if I asked. Jennifer had always been organized, but this was something else entirely. "You kept records?" "I wanted to be honest with you, completely honest." I almost laughed. Completely honest would have been telling me before she slept with my brother. Completely honest would have been filing for separation instead of sneaking around behind my back. This wasn't honesty. This was damage control. "How long has this been going on?" "Since February, maybe January. It's hard to say exactly when it started." "But you can tell me exactly where you conceived." She flinched. "Tom, please, this is hard enough." Hard enough for whom, I wanted to ask, but the front door opened before I could form the words. Heavy footsteps crossed the living room, and Danny appeared in the kitchen doorway like he'd been waiting outside for his cue. My brother looked good. He always looked good. At 34, Danny had the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to work too hard for anything. He was taller than me, better looking than me, and apparently better at seducing my wife than I was at keeping her interested. "Hey, Tom." He set a duffel bag down by the door. "Jen told you?" "She told me." "Good. That's good. We wanted to handle this right." We. They were already a we. Danny pulled out a chair and sat down like this was his kitchen table, in his house, having a conversation about his life. "Look, Tom, I know this is awkward, but we think it's best if we're honest about everything, for the baby's sake." How considerate. Don't be like that. This isn't how any of us wanted this to happen. I looked at Jennifer, who was studying her hands like they contained the secrets of the universe. How did you want it to happen? Danny leaned forward, his expression earnest. He'd always been good at looking earnest when he wanted something. We didn't plan this, Tom. It just happened. But now that it has, we need to think about what's best for everyone involved. And what's that? Well, Jen and I have been talking, and we think it would be better if we could raise the child here, in the family home. There's history here, tradition. The family home. Our grandfather had built this house in 1952 with his own hands and a loan from the First National Bank. Our father had grown up here, and so had Danny and I. When Dad passed 5 years ago, he'd left it to both of us, but I'd bought out Danny's half when he decided he wanted to explore opportunities in the city. You want me to give you the house? Not give, Jennifer said quickly. We'd work something out. Maybe you could stay in the garage apartment for a while until you get settled somewhere else. The garage apartment. A 400-square-foot space above my workshop, where I stored Christmas decorations and old tax returns. They wanted to put me in the garage like a piece of furniture they weren't ready to throw away, but didn't want cluttering up the main house. This is my home, Jen. I know, but think about the baby. Think about what's right. What's right? I'd spent 8 years doing what was right. Working overtime at the engineering firm to pay for Jennifer's real estate courses, fixing every broken thing in this house while she complained about the outdated fixtures, listening to her talk about her dreams of moving somewhere more sophisticated while I tried to make this place good enough for her. You've thought this all through, haven't you? Danny nodded. We have. And Tom, I want you to know that this doesn't change anything between us. You're still my brother. We're still family. Family. Right. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the streetlight illuminated the maple tree Dad had planted when Danny was born. 34 years old, that tree. Older than my marriage, older than most of my mistakes. When do you want me out? Tom, Jennifer started. When? Danny cleared his throat. We were thinking maybe by the end of the month. That gives you time to find a place, get your things together. 3 weeks. They were giving me 3 weeks to pack up my entire life and disappear so they could play house in the home my family had built. Okay. Jennifer blinked. Okay? Okay. You want the house? You can have it. They exchanged glances. This wasn't the reaction they'd expected. Jennifer had probably prepared for tears, arguments, maybe threats. Danny had likely rehearsed responses to accusations and demands for explanations. They hadn't prepared for acceptance. Just like that? Danny asked. Just like that. I turned back to face them. But I have some conditions. Of course, Jennifer said quickly. Whatever you need. First, I keep my workshop. All the tools, all the equipment. That stuff comes with me. Absolutely, Danny agreed. Second, I want 6 months, not 3 weeks. 6 months to find a place and make arrangements. That's reasonable, Jennifer said. And third, I want this handled legally. Proper papers, everything official. I don't want any confusion down the road about who owns what. Danny nodded. We can do that. Good. I picked up my wrench and knelt back down beside the sink. Then I guess we have a deal. They sat there for a moment, probably wondering if I was having some kind of breakdown. Maybe I was. But if so, it was the most productive breakdown I'd ever had. Tom, Jennifer said softly, are you sure you're okay with this? I looked at her from under the sink. My wife of 8 years, pregnant with my brother's child, asking if I was okay with handing over my family home so they could start their new life together. I'm fine, Jen. Really. I think this is probably the best thing for everyone. And the strange thing was, I meant it. After they left, Danny to get the rest of his things from wherever he'd been staying, Jennifer to call her sister with the good news, I finished fixing the faucet. The washer had been worn down to almost nothing, but it held. Sometimes that's all you need. Something that holds long enough for you to figure out what comes next. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, looking at the piece of paper Jennifer had left behind. Her timeline of betrayal, written in her neat handwriting. March 15th, March 22nd, April 3rd. 3 dates that had changed everything. But as I stared at those dates, something nagged at me. March 22nd. Danny had mentioned being at some conference in Denver around that time. I remembered because he'd called me from the airport, complaining about delayed flights and terrible hotel coffee. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through our text messages. There it was, March 21st. Stuck in Denver another day. This conference is a joke, but the networking might be worth it. If Danny was in Denver on March 21st, and Jennifer said they were together at the Holiday Inn on March 22nd, then either my brother was lying about where he was, or my wife was lying about when they were together. Either way, someone wasn't telling the truth. I folded the paper and put it in my wallet. Then I went upstairs to the bedroom I'd shared with Jennifer for 8 years and started making a list of everything I'd need to do over the next 6 months. The first item on the list was simple. Find out what really happened on March 22nd. The second item was more complicated. Figure out why Jennifer and Danny thought I was stupid enough to believe their story. But the third item was the most important. Make sure that when this was all over, I was the one who came out ahead. I'd spent 8 years being the good husband, the reliable brother, the guy who fixed things and paid bills and never caused trouble. I'd been so busy being what everyone else needed that I'd forgotten what I wanted. That was about to change. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Jennifer had already left for her real estate office by the time I came downstairs, probably eager to share her news with anyone who'd listen. The coffee pot was empty, and she'd left her breakfast dishes in the sink. Some habits never change, even during life-altering revelations. I made fresh coffee and sat down with my laptop. If I was going to play along with their game, I needed to understand the rules first. The Marriott downtown kept digital records of their security footage for 90 days. I knew this because I'd done the engineering work on their parking garage expansion last year, and their head of security had mentioned it during one of our meetings. March 15th was 68 days ago. The footage would still exist. I called the hotel and asked to speak to Mike Rodriguez, the security chief I'd worked with. Tom, how have you been? That garage project turned out great, by the way. No structural issues at all. Thanks, Mike. Listen, I need a favor, and it's kind of personal. What's going on? My wife says she was at your hotel on March 15th. Room registration would probably be under Jennifer Thompson. That's her maiden name. I just need to confirm she was actually there. There was a pause. Mike had been in security for 20 years. He knew the difference between a routine inquiry and a marriage falling apart. This official business, Tom? Not yet, but it might be. Give me a few minutes. I'll call you back. While I waited, I did some basic research on pregnancy timelines. If Jennifer was 11 weeks along, conception would have happened around the first week of March. That lined up with her March 15th date, assuming she was telling the truth about how far along she was. But something still bothered me about the March 22nd date. Danny's text from Denver was time-stamped 6:47 p.m. Mountain Time. If he was really stuck there because of flight delays, how did he make it back for a romantic evening with my wife? My phone rang. Tom, it's Mike. Your wife was here on March 15th, all right. Checked in at 3:30 p.m., checked out the next morning at 11:15 a.m. Room was registered to a company called Oren Enterprises. That name mean anything to you? Oren Enterprises. Danny's consulting business. The one that never seemed to have any actual clients but somehow paid for his expensive apartment and his BMW. Yeah, that's my brother's company. Anyone else on the registration? Daniel Oren. Looks like they had the executive suite on the 14th floor. Thanks, Mike. I owe you one. Tom, Whatever's going on, I hope you work it out. I hung up and stared at my laptop screen. So Jennifer and Danny had been together at the Marriott, just like she'd said. But why use his business credit card? And why book the executive suite for what was supposed to be a secret affair? I opened a new browser tab and searched for Oren Enterprises. The company website was slick and professional, full of buzzwords about strategic consulting and innovative solutions. But when I dug deeper into the business registration records, things got interesting. Oren Enterprises had been incorporated in Delaware 3 years ago. Danny was listed as the CEO and sole shareholder. But according to the financial filings I could access, the company had reported losses every year since its founding. No profits, no significant revenue, just a steady stream of business expenses that somehow kept Danny living like a successful entrepreneur. I made another pot of coffee and kept digging. The Holiday Inn by the airport was easier to investigate. I called pretending to be Danny, claiming I needed a receipt for tax purposes for my stay on March 22nd. The desk clerk was helpful and efficient. "I'm showing you checked in on March 21st at 11:45 p.m. and checked out on March 23rd at 10:30 a.m. Would you like me to email the receipt to the address we have on file?" "Actually, can you confirm the address you have?" "Sure. It's danny.oren@orenenterprises.com. "Perfect. And just to double-check, was that a single occupancy room?" "No, sir, you booked a double. 2 guests registered." So Danny had been at the Holiday Inn on March 22nd, not stuck in Denver like he'd told me, and he'd been there with someone else, presumably Jennifer. But the timing still didn't make sense. His text about being stuck in Denver was sent at 6:47 p.m. on March 21st. The hotel said he checked in at 11:45 p.m. the same night. That meant he'd have had to catch a flight from Denver, land here, and drive to the hotel in less than 5 hours, accounting for the time zone difference. Possible, but tight. Very tight. I called Danny's cell phone. "Hey, Tom, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine. Listen, I was thinking about that Denver conference you went to in March. The one where you got stuck an extra day because of flight delays." "Oh, yeah. That was a nightmare." "Why?" "Jennifer mentioned you two got together around that time, and I'm trying to piece together the timeline. When exactly did you get back from Denver?" There was a pause. "I'm not sure I remember exactly." "Why does it matter?" "It doesn't, really. I'm just trying to understand how all this happened. When did you know about the pregnancy?" "Jennifer told me a couple weeks ago, same as you." That was interesting. If Jennifer had told Danny about the pregnancy at the same time she'd told me, then how had they managed to coordinate their story so perfectly? How had Danny known to show up at our house last night with his bags already packed? "Danny, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you in love with her?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Tom, I don't think it's a simple question. Are you in love with my wife?" "It's complicated." "No, it's not. Either you are or you aren't." "Yes," he said finally. "I am." "How long?" "What do you mean?" "How long have you been in love with Jennifer?" "I don't know. A while." "Before she got pregnant?" "Tom, I don't see how this helps anyone." "Humor me." He sighed. "Yes, before she got pregnant." "How long before?" "A year, maybe longer." "Look, Tom, I never meant for this to happen. It just did." "But you're not sorry it happened." "No," he said quietly. "I'm not sorry." At least he was being honest about that. One more question. The bed and breakfast in Millfield, April 3rd. What was that about? "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you'd already been together twice and Jennifer was already pregnant, why meet again?" We needed to talk about what we were going to do." "And what did you decide?" "That we wanted to be together. That we wanted to raise this child together. In my house." "Tom, in my house, Danny. You decided you wanted to raise your child in my house. It's the family home. It's where we grew up. Don't you think the baby deserves that?" "What I think, I said carefully, is that you and Jennifer have this all figured out. The timeline, the story, the logistics. Very impressive. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I'm just admiring your planning skills. I'll talk to you later, Danny. I hung up before he could respond. The bed and breakfast in Millfield was a 40-minute drive from town. I'd been there once, years ago, for a friend's wedding. It was the kind of place that advertised itself as romantic and intimate, which meant expensive and pretentious. I called and asked about their reservation records for April 3rd. I'm sorry, but we don't give out information about our guests, the woman on the phone said. I understand. I'm not asking for details. I just need to confirm that my wife was there that day. We're going through a separation, and there are some legal issues involved. Oh. Her tone softened. I'm sorry to hear that. Can you give me her name? Jennifer Thompson, or possibly Jennifer Calder. She might have been with someone named Daniel Oren. Hold on a moment. I waited, listening to classical music and wondering what I'd do if she said there was no record of Jennifer being there. Would that make things better or worse? Sir, I do show a reservation for Daniel Oren on April 3rd. 1 night, deluxe suite, 2 guests. Thank you. That's all I needed to know. So that part of Jennifer's story checked out too. She and Danny had been at the bed and breakfast on April 3rd, just like she'd said. But I was starting to think the real question wasn't where they'd been or when. The real question was why Jennifer had been so precise about the dates and locations. Why give me a detailed timeline unless she wanted me to be able to verify it? I spent the rest of the morning researching Delaware corporate law and limited liability companies. By lunchtime, I had a pretty good understanding of how to set up a shell company that could own property without revealing the identity of the actual owner. I also had a pretty good understanding of how someone might use such a company to hide assets during a separation or divorce. At 2 o'clock, I drove to the office of Patricia Wells, the lawyer who'd handled the paperwork when I bought out Danny's share of the house. Patricia was in her 60s, sharp as a razor, and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when her clients needed her to be. Tom Calder, she said when her secretary showed me into her office. I haven't seen you since we closed on your house. What brings you by? I need to set up a limited liability company. Today, if possible. Patricia raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. Most people want to think about it for a while, make sure they understand the implications. I understand the implications. I need a company that can own real estate, and I need it to be completely separate from my personal assets. Are you in some kind of trouble, Tom? Not yet, but I might be soon. She studied my face for a moment, then pulled out a legal pad. Tell me what you need. An hour later, I walked out of Patricia's office as the sole owner and operator of Calder Holdings, LLC, a Delaware limited liability company authorized to conduct business in our state. The company had its own tax ID number, its own bank account, and complete legal authority to buy, sell, and manage real estate. It also had one very important characteristic. Nobody could determine who owned it without a court order. I drove home and found Jennifer in the kitchen making dinner. She looked up when I came in, and for a moment, I saw something in her face that might have been guilt, or maybe just indigestion. How was your day? She asked. Productive. How was yours? Good. I showed 3 houses and got 2 new listings. That's great. We stood there looking at each other like strangers making small talk at a bus stop. Tom, about last night. I know this is hard, but I want you to know that I never meant to hurt you. I know, Jen. Do you? Because you're being so calm about all this, and it's making me nervous. Would you prefer if I was angry? I'd prefer if you were... I don't know. Something. Anything. This isn't normal. She was right. It wasn't normal. A normal husband would have thrown things, made threats, demanded explanations. A normal husband would have kicked Danny out of the house and told Jennifer to choose between her marriage and her affair. But I wasn't feeling normal. I was feeling something else entirely, something cold and patient and very, very focused. I'm processing, I told her. This is how I process. By being completely rational and accommodating. By figuring out what I want and how to get it. And what do you want? I looked at her standing there in our kitchen, wearing the apron I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary, asking me what I wanted like she actually cared about the answer. I want everyone to be happy, Jen. I want you and Danny to have what you need to raise your child. I want to move on with my life without any drama or complications. And I want to make sure that when this is all over, we can all look back and say we handled it like adults. She smiled for the first time since this whole thing started. That sounds perfect. I think so too. What I didn't tell her was that I'd spent the afternoon learning exactly how much our house was worth, exactly how much equity we had in it, and exactly how to make sure that when I sold it to Calder Holdings LLC for fair market value, she and Danny would have no legal claim to any of the proceeds. What I also didn't tell her was that I'd scheduled a meeting with Mike Rodriguez for tomorrow morning to review the security footage from March 15th. Not because I doubted her story, but because I wanted to see exactly what my wife and my brother looked like when they thought no one was watching. And what I definitely didn't tell her was that I'd already started planning exactly how I was going to destroy both of their lives, methodically and completely, while maintaining the appearance of being the most reasonable, accommodating, generous ex-husband in the history of broken marriages. Some things are better kept to yourself. The Marriott's security office was in the basement, a windowless room filled with monitors and the kind of industrial carpeting that had given up trying to look good sometime during the Clinton administration. Mike Rodriguez sat behind a desk covered with coffee cups and incident reports, looking like a man who'd seen every possible way human beings could disappoint each other. "You sure you want to see this, Tom?" "I'm sure." He pulled up the footage from March 15th and fast-forwarded to 3:30 p.m. The lobby camera showed Jennifer walking through the front entrance, but she wasn't alone. Danny was with her, and they weren't acting like two people having a secret affair. They were acting like a couple on vacation. Danny had his hand on Jennifer's back as they approached the front desk. Jennifer was laughing at something he'd said. When the desk clerk handed over the key cards, Danny took both of them and gestured toward the elevators like a gentleman escorting his date. "They look comfortable together," Mike observed. "Yeah, they do." He switched to the elevator camera. Inside the elevator, Jennifer and Danny stood close together, but not touching. They were talking, but the camera didn't pick up audio. Whatever they were discussing, it looked serious, businesslike. "Can you pull up the 14th floor?" "Sure." The hallway camera showed them walking to the executive suite. Danny opened the door and let Jennifer go in first. The timestamp read 3:47 p.m. When did they leave? Mike checked his notes. Checkout was 11:15 a.m. the next morning, but the room key was last used at 6:23 a.m. So they left early. Looks like it. You want to see them leaving? Please. The lobby camera showed Jennifer and Danny exiting together at 6:31 a.m. They looked like two people who'd had a successful business meeting, not like lovers sneaking away from a romantic rendezvous. Danny carried a briefcase I hadn't noticed him bringing in. Jennifer had a manila folder tucked under her arm. "Mike, can you do me a favor? Can you check if Oren Enterprises has held any other meetings at your hotel in the past year?" "Give me a minute." He pulled up the reservation system and scrolled through the records. "Here we go. Daniel Oren, Oren Enterprises. March 15th was the 4th time he's booked rooms here since last October. Always the executive suite, always for one night, always with a second guest." "Same guest every time?" "No, that's the interesting part. Different guest each time. March 15th was the first time with Jennifer Thompson." "Who were the other guests?" Mike hesitated. "Tom, I don't know if I should—" "Mike, my wife is pregnant with my brother's child, and they want me to give them my house so they can raise the baby there. I think I'm entitled to know who else my brother has been meeting with." He sighed and turned the monitor so I could see it. October 23rd, Guest was Margaret Hoffman. December 18th, guest was Patricia Chen. February 9th, guest was Linda Martinez. I didn't recognize any of the names, but I memorized them anyway. Can you print out those reservation records? I can't officially give you anything, but if you happen to see this information while you were here consulting on a potential security upgrade for our parking garage, well, that would be between you and me. Mike Rodriguez was a good man. I spent the rest of the morning at the public library, using their computers to research the names from Danny's hotel meetings. Margaret Hoffman was a real estate appraiser who specialized in commercial properties. Patricia Chen was a loan officer at First National Bank. Linda Martinez was a title insurance agent. Individually, none of these professions meant much. Together, they represented every step of a complex real estate transaction, the kind of transaction that might require multiple meetings and careful coordination, the kind of transaction that might involve selling a property that didn't entirely belong to you. I drove home and found Danny's BMW in my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see him and Jennifer sitting at the table, papers spread out between them. They looked up when I came in, and Jennifer quickly gathered the papers into a stack. "Hey, Tom," Danny said. "We were just going over some logistics." "What kind of logistics?" "Prenatal care, mostly. Doctor appointments, insurance coverage, that sort of thing." I nodded and poured myself a cup of coffee. The papers Jennifer had been organizing were face down, but I could see the letterhead on the top sheet. First National Bank. "Danny, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Those business meetings you've been having at the Marriott, how's that working out for you?" He went very still. "What business meetings?" "The ones with Margaret Hoffman, Patricia Chen, Linda Martinez. I'm just curious about your consulting work." Jennifer's face had gone pale. "Tom, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that my brother has been holding regular business meetings at the Marriott for the past 6 months, and one of those meetings happened to be with my wife on March 15th. Danny stood up slowly. "Tom, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "Have there? Because it seems to me like you've been putting together some kind of real estate deal, and for some reason you needed Jennifer's involvement. That's ridiculous." "Is it? Margaret Hoffman is an appraiser. Patricia Chen works in commercial lending. Linda Martinez handles title insurance. That's quite a coincidence." Jennifer was staring at Danny with an expression I'd never seen before. Not love, not guilt, but something that looked almost like fear. "Danny," she said quietly, "what is he talking about?" "Nothing, Jen. Tom's just confused." "I'm not confused," I said. "I'm actually starting to understand things quite clearly. For instance, I understand that Oren Enterprises has been losing money every year since it was incorporated, but somehow Danny can afford an executive suite at the Marriott whenever he needs to hold a business meeting. Tom, I also understand that Jennifer has been working in real estate for 3 years now, long enough to know how to structure complex property transactions." "Stop it," Jennifer said. "And I understand that this house is worth approximately $340,000, which would be a very nice asset to have access to if someone needed collateral for a business loan." Danny sat back down heavily. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." He looked at Jennifer, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. "We can't." "Why not?" "Because it's complicated." "Try me. I'm an engineer. I understand complicated." They sat there looking at each other like two people trying to decide whether to jump off a cliff together. Finally, Jennifer spoke. "There is no pregnancy." The words hit me like a physical blow, not because I was devastated, but because I was relieved. And the relief made me realize just how much I'd been dreading the idea of my brother and my wife raising a child together in the house where I'd grown up. "What? I'm not pregnant, Tom. I never was." "Then what the hell is this about?" Danny leaned forward. "Tom, Oren Enterprises is in trouble. Serious trouble. I owe some people a lot of money, and they're not the kind of people who accept payment plans." What kind of people? The kind who break things when you don't pay them back. I stared at my brother. You're in debt to criminals? They prefer alternative lenders, but yeah, basically. How much? 200,000. $200,000? Danny, what did you do? I made some bad investments, took some risks that didn't pay off. The business was supposed to generate enough cash flow to cover the loans, but it never took off the way I expected. Jennifer was twisting her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit I'd noticed years ago. So you decided to steal my house? Not steal, Danny said quickly. Borrow against. The plan was to use the house as collateral for a legitimate bank loan, pay off the dangerous debt, and then pay back the bank loan over time. Using what money? That's where Jennifer came in, her real estate connections, her knowledge of the local market. We were going to flip some properties, generate enough profit to service the debt. And the pregnancy story? Jennifer finally looked at me. We needed you out of the house so we could refinance it without your signature. If you thought I was having Danny's baby and wanted to raise the child here, we figured you'd be willing to sign over your interest in the property. For the good of the family. Something like that. I sat there processing this information. My wife and my brother had conspired to steal my house, not because they were in love, but because Danny owed money to people who would hurt him if he didn't pay up. In a weird way, it was almost insulting. If they'd actually been having an affair, at least there would have been passion involved. This was just greed and desperation dressed up as a family crisis. Tom, Danny said, I know how this looks, but we didn't have a choice. These people I owe money to, they're not going to wait much longer. How much longer? 2 weeks? Maybe 3. Or what? Or they start collecting in other ways. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. He was scared, not just worried or anxious, but genuinely terrified. Danny, why didn't you just ask me for help? Because you don't have $200,000. But I have a house worth $340,000, which you never would have risked on one of my business ventures. He was right about that. So instead, you decided to trick me into giving it to you. We were going to pay you back, Jennifer said. Once we got the flipping business established, we were going to buy you out properly. With what guarantee? With our word. I almost laughed. Your word. The same word you gave me 8 years ago when you promised to love, honor, and cherish me. That word? Jennifer flinched. Tom, I know we've handled this badly, but we're desperate. Danny could get hurt if we don't figure something out soon. And that's my problem because he's your brother. My brother, who was willing to let me believe my wife was cheating on me and carrying his child so he could steal my house to pay off his gambling debts. They weren't gambling debts, Danny said. They were business investments. What's the difference? The difference is that I was trying to build something, not just throwing money away. And how did that work out for you? He didn't answer. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the maple tree Dad had planted was starting to show its fall colors. In a few weeks, the leaves would turn brilliant red and gold before falling to the ground. Here's what's going to happen, I said, without turning around. You're going to gather up all your papers and your fake pregnancy timeline and your business plans, and you're going to leave my house. Tom, I'm not finished. Jennifer, you're going to pack a bag and go stay with your sister until I decide what I want to do about our marriage. You can't just throw me out. This is my home too. Actually, it's not. The deed is in my name only, remember? You wanted it that way for tax purposes. I turned back to face them. Danny, you're going to figure out your own solution to your money problems. Maybe get a real job. Maybe ask your criminal friends for an extension. Maybe leave town. I don't care what you do, but you're not using my house as collateral for your mistakes. Tom, please. These people will hurt me. Then you should have thought of that before you borrowed money from them. I'm your brother. My brother wouldn't have tried to steal from me. Jennifer was crying now, but they weren't the kind of tears that made me want to comfort her. They were the frustrated tears of someone whose plan had fallen apart. Tom, what if we told you the truth from the beginning? What if we just asked for your help? Then I would have said no, and you'd have had to find another solution. But Danny could get hurt. Danny's a grown man. He made his choices, and now he gets to live with the consequences. I walked to the front door and opened it. Both of you need to leave. Now. They gathered up their papers and their dignity and walked past me without another word. I watched Danny's BMW pull out of my driveway and disappear down the street. Then I went back inside, poured myself a drink, and called Patricia Wells. Patricia, it's Tom Calder. I need to accelerate our timeline. How quickly can I transfer ownership of my house to Calder Holdings LLC? If you're willing to pay for expedited processing, I can have the papers ready by tomorrow afternoon. But Tom, are you sure about this? Once you transfer the property to the LLC, there could be tax implications. I'm sure. And Patricia, I'm also going to need you to draw up eviction notices. For whom? My wife and my brother. There was a pause. Tom, what's going on? Nothing I can't handle. How soon can you have those ready? Tomorrow morning. Perfect. And Patricia? Make sure the eviction notices are served by a sheriff's deputy. I want this done officially. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and made a list of everything I needed to do over the next week. Transfer the house to the LLC. Serve the eviction notices. Change the locks. Cancel Jennifer's credit cards. Move her belongings to her sister's house. And then, once all of that was done, I was going to put the house on the market and sell it to the highest bidder. Danny and Jennifer thought they could manipulate me into giving them what they wanted by appealing to my sense of family loyalty and my desire to do the right thing. They were about to learn that sometimes the right thing is making sure that people who try to cheat you don't profit from their deception. I raised my glass in a toast to the empty kitchen. To family, I said out loud, and to getting exactly what you deserve. The next morning, I woke up alone in my house for the first time in 8 years. The realization hit me before I even opened my eyes, in the strange stillness that felt heavier than any noise ever had. The silence was remarkable. No hairdryer running in the bathroom. No morning news chattering from the kitchen television. No one asking me if I'd seen her car keys, or whether we had any plans for the weekend. It wasn't peaceful yet. It was raw, unfamiliar, like walking into a room after the furniture has been moved and realizing how big it actually is. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching the sunrise through windows that suddenly seemed cleaner and brighter than they had in months. The light crept across the countertops, catching dust motes in the air, illuminating small details I'd stopped noticing when life was louder. The house felt stripped down to its essentials: walls, light, time. For the first time in a long while, no one else's mood set the tone for my morning. At 9 o'clock sharp, Patricia Wells called. The transfer documents are ready, and I've prepared the eviction notices. The LLC now owns your house free and clear, and as the managing member of the LLC, you have full authority to determine who can and cannot live there. Her voice was calm, precise, the voice of someone who dealt in outcomes rather than emotions. Hearing it made everything feel suddenly very real. How long do I have to give them? 30 days is standard, but given the circumstances, I'd recommend 14. It shows you're being reasonable while still maintaining your legal rights. Make it 7 days. There was a pause on the line, just long enough to register surprise. Tom, that might be seen as... Patricia, they lied to me, manipulated me, and tried to steal my house. I think 7 days is generous. Another pause, then a quiet exhale. 7 days it is. The deputy will serve the notices this afternoon. At 10:30, I drove to First National Bank and opened a business account for Calder Holdings LLC. The process was efficient, almost impersonal. Forms, signatures, polite smiles from people who didn't know the story behind the paperwork. The account came with a business credit line secured by the property value of the house. Not enough to solve Danny's problems, but more than enough to handle my immediate expenses. For the first time since everything had started unraveling, I felt financially anchored instead of exposed. At noon, I met with Rebecca Martinez, a real estate agent Jennifer had always complained about. "She's too aggressive," Jennifer used to say. "She makes people uncomfortable with all her questions and her pushy attitude." Perfect. "Mr. Calder, I have to say I'm surprised to hear from you. Jennifer always gave me the impression that you two were very happy in your home." "Things change, Rebecca. I need to sell the house as quickly as possible, and I need to get the best possible price." "How quickly?" "I'd like to list it tomorrow and have offers by the weekend." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "That's ambitious. What's your motivation?" "My motivation is my business. Your job is to sell the house. Can you do that or not?" She studied me for a moment, then smiled, not warmly, but appreciatively. "I can do that, but I'll need complete access to the property for showings, staging, photography, the works." "You'll have it. And I'll need you to be flexible about showing times, evenings, weekends, whatever works for potential buyers." "Done. One more thing, Jennifer's going to hear about this. The real estate community in this town isn't that big. She's going to call you probably today." Let her call. By the time I got home, the house already felt less like a shared space and more like an asset in transition. At 2 o'clock, I was in my workshop organizing tools, sorting, cleaning, putting things back where they belonged, when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. The sound was sharp, angry. Through the window, I saw Jennifer marching toward the front door with the determined stride of a woman who'd spent the morning working herself up for a confrontation. She didn't bother knocking. "Tom, where are you?" "In the workshop." She appeared in the doorway, holding a legal document in her hand. Her face was flushed, and her hair was disheveled like she'd been running her fingers through it. "What is this?" "It's an eviction notice." "I can see that. What I want to know is why I'm being evicted from my own home." "Because it's not your home anymore. It belongs to Calder Holdings LLC, and the managing member of that company has decided that you're no longer welcome here." "You can't do this." "I already did it." She waved the paper at me. "This says I have 7 days to vacate the premises." 7 days, Tom. That's not legal." "Actually, it is. Patricia Wells is very thorough about these things. I'll fight this. I'll get my own lawyer." "Good luck with that. You might want to ask your lawyer to explain the difference between marital property and corporate assets." Jennifer stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "I don't understand. Yesterday you were willing to give us the house. Today you're throwing me out. What changed?" "Yesterday I thought my wife was pregnant with my brother's child. Today I know my wife and my brother tried to steal my house to pay off his debts to criminals. That's what changed. We weren't stealing it. We were going to pay you back. With money you didn't have, from a business that doesn't exist, using profits from property flips you'd never done before. We had a plan. You had a fantasy. There's a difference." She sat down on my workbench, suddenly looking exhausted. "Tom, what do you want from us? What would it take for you to forgive this?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" "Jennifer, you've been lying to me for months. You conspired with my brother to defraud me out of my home. You made me believe you were carrying his child. There's nothing you can do to fix that." "So that's it? 8 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that when you decided Danny's problems were more important than your marriage." She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. "What about Danny? Those people he owes money to, they're not going to just forget about it." "That's Danny's problem. He's your brother. He's a grown man who made stupid choices. I'm not responsible for protecting him from the consequences. They could hurt him. Then maybe he should have thought of that before he borrowed money from dangerous people." Jennifer looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're different, she said. This isn't like you. Maybe this is exactly like me and you just never paid attention before. The Tom I married would never throw his own brother to the wolves. The Tom you married trusted his wife and his brother not to conspire against him. That Tom was naive. She stood up and walked to the workshop door. I'll be back for my things. You have 7 days. And after that, if you're still here, the sheriff will remove you. She turned back to face me one more time. I hope you're happy, Tom. I hope this revenge fantasy of yours is worth destroying your family over. My family destroyed itself. I'm just cleaning up the mess. After she left, I called Rebecca Martinez. Rebecca, it's Tom Calder. How soon can we get that listing active? I can have it online tonight if you want. I took some preliminary photos this morning while you were at the bank. Do it. And Rebecca, price it aggressively. I want multiple offers by Sunday. How aggressively? List it at $320. If we get multiple offers, we can create a bidding war. That's $20,000 under market value. I know. The goal isn't to maximize profit. The goal is to sell quickly and create urgency. I like the way you think, Mr. Calder. That evening, I ordered Chinese takeout and ate it alone at the kitchen table while scrolling through real estate websites on my laptop. The house was already listed, with professional photos that made it look warm and inviting and perfect for a young family just starting out. The asking price was $320,000. Rebecca had been right about it being under market value. Similar houses in the neighborhood were listed for $340,000 to $360,000. But I wasn't trying to get rich. I was trying to get even. At 8 o'clock, Danny called. Tom, we need to talk. No, we don't. Jennifer told me about the eviction notice. This is insane. What's insane is thinking you could steal my house and I wouldn't notice. We weren't stealing it. We were trying to save my life. By lying to me and manipulating me and making me think my wife was having an affair. We didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices, Danny. You chose to borrow money from criminals. You chose to lie to me. You chose to involve my wife in your scheme. Those were all choices. Tom, please, I'm begging you. These people are getting impatient. Then pay them back. With what money? I don't know, and I don't care. Get a loan from a legitimate bank. Sell your car, get a job, move back in with Mom. Figure it out. You know I can't get a legitimate loan. My credit is shot. Then maybe you shouldn't have borrowed money you couldn't pay back. There was a long pause. What if I told you I was sorry? What if I promised to make this right? How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure something out. I'll find a way to pay you back for any trouble this has caused. Danny, the trouble this has caused is that I no longer trust you or my wife. How exactly are you planning to pay me back for that? I don't know. But Tom, if you don't help me, these people are going to hurt me, maybe seriously. Then you better hope you can run fast. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke up to find 3 missed calls from Jennifer and 2 from Danny. I deleted the voicemails without listening to them. Rebecca called at 9:30. Tom, you're not going to believe this. We've had 17 showings scheduled for today, and it's not even noon yet. Any serious interest? 3 parties have already asked about making offers. 1 couple wants to schedule a second showing this afternoon. What kind of offers? Full asking price, maybe a little over. The market's hot right now and your house is priced to move. Keep me posted. At lunchtime, I drove past the house and saw cars parked up and down the street. Rebecca was leading a group of potential buyers through the front door, while another group waited on the porch. A third group was walking around the yard, pointing at the mature landscaping and the detached workshop. My phone rang. Jennifer. Tom, what the hell are you doing? Selling my house. There are strangers walking through our bedroom. It's not our bedroom anymore. You don't live here, remember? I have 7 days. You have 6 days. And during those 6 days, I'm going to show the house to as many potential buyers as possible. This is harassment. This is business. Tom, please, can we just talk about this like rational adults? We tried that yesterday. You told me you weren't sorry for trying to steal my house, and I told you I was selling it. What else is there to talk about? I never said I wasn't sorry. You said you had a plan to pay me back. That's not the same as being sorry. I am sorry. I'm sorry we lied to you. I'm sorry we hurt you. And I'm sorry we handled this so badly. Are you sorry you tried to steal my house? There was a pause. We weren't trying to steal it. Then we have nothing to talk about. I hung up and drove to the bank to meet with the business loan officer. If I was going to sell the house quickly, I needed to make sure Calder Holdings LLC could handle the transaction without any complications. By 5 o'clock, Rebecca had fielded inquiries from 23 potential buyers and scheduled 14 showings for the weekend. Tom, I've been selling real estate for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this. It's like you're giving the house away. Maybe I am. Well, whatever your motivation, it's working. I think we're going to have multiple offers by Sunday night. How multiple? I'm guessing 4 or 5 serious offers, maybe more. What kind of numbers are we looking at? Based on the interest level, I think we'll see offers in the 330 to 350 range. Maybe higher if we get a bidding war going. 350 would be a $30,000 profit over the asking price. Not bad for a house I'd owned free and clear for 5 years. That evening I sat in my workshop and made a list of everything I wanted to take with me when I moved. Tools, books, a few pieces of furniture that had belonged to my father. Everything else could stay with the house or go to charity. I was traveling light these days. At 9 o'clock, someone knocked on the front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Danny standing on the porch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Tom, I need 5 minutes. You need a lot of things. 5 minutes of my time isn't one of them. Please, just hear me out. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him into the living room. Talk. I've been thinking about what you said, about choices and consequences. And you're right. I made bad choices, and now I have to live with them. Glad you figured that out. But Tom, I'm your brother. We grew up in this house together. We played in that backyard. We built forts in those woods behind the property line. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It used to. What would Dad say if he knew you were letting me get hurt when you could help? Dad would say you should have thought of that before you tried to steal from your brother. Danny sat down heavily on the couch. What if I signed over my interest in Mom's house? Would that be enough collateral for you to help me? You don't have an interest in Mom's house. She's still alive, and she's not planning to die anytime soon. But when she does, her house will go to both of us equally, assuming she doesn't change her will because one of her sons turned out to be a criminal. I'm not a criminal. You tried to defraud me out of my house. What would you call that? He didn't answer. Danny, here's the thing you don't seem to understand. Even if I wanted to help you, which I don't, I couldn't. You owe $200,000 to people who apparently don't have much patience. I don't have $200,000 in cash, and even if I sold this house tomorrow, it would take weeks to close and get the money. What if we could get an extension? What if I could buy more time? How? I don't know. Maybe if I gave them something as a down payment, they'd give me another month or 2 to come up with the rest. What kind of down payment? 20, 30,000, enough to show good faith. I stared at my brother. Even now, even after everything that had happened, he was still trying to manipulate me. You want me to give you $30,000? Not give, lend. I'd pay you back. With what money? I'll figure something out. The same way you figured out how to pay back the original $200,000? Tom, please, I'm desperate here. I can see that. But your desperation doesn't create an obligation for me to save you. What if they hurt me? Then I guess you'll learn a valuable lesson about borrowing money from dangerous people. Danny stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. You know what the worst part of this is? It's not that you won't help me. It's that you don't even care what happens to me. You're right, I don't. He turned around to face me. When did you become so cold? When my wife and my brother tried to steal my house. We weren't. Danny, stop, just stop. You keep saying you weren't trying to steal from me, but that's exactly what you were trying to do. You were going to use my house as collateral for a loan, and if your business plan didn't work out, which it wouldn't have, because you have no business experience and no capital and no realistic prospects for generating income, I would have lost my home. We would have figured something out. No, you wouldn't have. You would have defaulted on the loan, the bank would have foreclosed on my house, and I would have been left with nothing while you and Jennifer moved on to your next scheme. That's not true, isn't it? Danny, you've been running cons and get-rich-quick schemes since high school. You've never held a steady job, you've never built anything lasting, and you've never taken responsibility for your failures. Why would this time be different? He didn't have an answer for that. I think you should leave now. Tom. Leave, Danny. And don't come back. If those people you owe money to come looking for you, I'll tell them I haven't seen you. You do that? I do that to protect myself and my property, not to protect you. He walked to the front door and paused with his hand on the knob. You know, Jennifer was right about one thing. You have changed. The brother I grew up with wouldn't have turned his back on family. The brother you grew up with trusted his family not to betray him. After Danny left, I poured myself a drink and sat on the front porch, looking out at the street where I'd learned to ride a bike and played baseball with the neighborhood kids. In a week, maybe less, this wouldn't be my street anymore. Someone else would live in this house. Someone else would mow this lawn. Someone else would sit on this porch in the evenings. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed with a text message from Rebecca. 4 offers coming in tomorrow. This is going to be fun. I raised my glass to the empty street. To new beginnings, I said out loud, and to getting exactly what you pay for. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you want to believe in fresh starts and second chances. I was drinking coffee on the front porch when Rebecca Martinez pulled into the driveway at exactly 9 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio that looked thick with paperwork. Tom, I hope you're ready for this. We have 6 offers, and 3 of them are above asking price. How far above? The highest is $345, all cash, 30-day close. The lowest is $328, conventional financing, 45-day close. I did the math quickly. Even the lowest offer would net me enough profit to disappear for a while, maybe start over somewhere new. The highest offer would give me options I hadn't even considered yet. What's your recommendation? Normally I'd say take the highest offer, but the all-cash deal has some advantages. No financing contingencies, faster close, less chance of complications. Let's go with the all-cash offer. You sure? You could probably get them up to $350 if you countered. I'm sure. Draw up the acceptance. Rebecca opened her portfolio and started pulling out contracts. The buyers want to do a final walkthrough on Friday and close the following Monday. That gives you exactly 2 weeks to vacate. That works? Tom, can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you in such a hurry to sell? This house is beautiful, it's in a great neighborhood, and from what I can see, you've taken excellent care of it. I watched a squirrel run across the yard, carrying an acorn toward the old oak tree by the property line. Sometimes you have to let go of things to keep them from being taken from you. That's either very wise or very sad. Maybe both. After Rebecca left, I spent the morning packing books and sorting through 8 years of accumulated possessions. It was amazing how much stuff Jennifer and I had collected. Kitchen gadgets we'd never used, clothes that no longer fit, furniture we'd bought because it was on sale rather than because we needed it. I was loading boxes into my truck when Jennifer's car pulled into the driveway. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, staring at the sold sign Rebecca had planted in the front yard, before getting out and walking toward me. So it's really happening. It's really happening. $345,000. Rebecca called me. Word travels fast in the real estate community. Tom, that's a lot of money. More than enough to help Danny and still leave you with a substantial profit. I set down the box I was carrying and looked at my wife. Even after everything that had happened, she was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago. But now I could see things I'd missed before. The calculating look in her eyes when she wanted something, the way she tilted her head when she was trying to manipulate a situation to her advantage. Jennifer, the house sold for $345 because I priced it to sell quickly. If I'd wanted to maximize profit, I could have listed it for market value and waited for the right buyer. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because my goal wasn't to get rich. My goal was to get away from you and Danny as quickly as possible. Where does that leave us? There is no us. Our marriage is over. Just like that? Just like that. She leaned against her car and crossed her arms. What if I told you Danny was gone? What if I told you he left town yesterday and I haven't heard from him since? I'd say that was probably smart of him. What if I told you I was sorry? Really, truly sorry for everything we did? I'd say it was too late for apologies. Tom, we were together for 8 years. We built a life together. Doesn't that count for anything? We built a life based on trust and honesty. You destroyed that when you decided to lie to me and conspire against me with my brother. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Jennifer. This was a calculated plan to defraud me out of my home. You researched the legal requirements. You coordinated with Danny's business contacts. You rehearsed your story about being pregnant. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. She was quiet for a moment, staring at the ground. So, what happens now? Now you pack up your belongings and find somewhere else to live. I finish loading my truck and find somewhere else to live. We file for divorce and divide up whatever assets are left. What assets? You're selling the only thing of value we own. We own a lot of things, Jennifer. We just don't own them together anymore. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her a bank statement. Calder Holdings LLC now owns this house, and as the managing member of that LLC, I control all decisions about the property and the proceeds from its sale. You can't do that. I already did it. I'll fight you in court. With what lawyer? You don't have any money, remember? Your real estate business barely covers your car payment and your credit card bills. I'll find a way. Good luck with that. Jennifer straightened up and walked toward the house. I'm going to get my things. You have until Friday. After that, anything you leave behind goes to charity. She stopped at the front door and turned back to face me. You know what the really sad part is, Tom? You think you've won something here. You think you've gotten your revenge and taught us both a lesson, but all you've really done is destroy your own family. My family destroyed itself when they decided to steal from me. Danny's your brother. I'm your wife. That has to mean something. It used to, but you and Danny made it clear that family loyalty only goes one way. You expected me to sacrifice my home and my financial security to solve Danny's problems, but neither of you cared enough about me to be honest about what you were doing. We were trying to protect you. You were trying to use me. She went inside, and I could hear her moving around upstairs, opening closets and dresser drawers. 20 minutes later, she came back out carrying 2 suitcases and a garment bag. That's it? For now. I'll come back for the rest later this week. Jennifer. She stopped and looked at me. For what it's worth, I really did love you. If you'd just asked for help instead of trying to trick me into giving it, things might have been different. Would they? Would you really have risked your house to help Danny pay off his debts? I thought about it honestly. No, probably not. Then we did what we had to do. And I'm doing what I have to do. She loaded her suitcases into her car and got behind the wheel. Tom? Yeah? I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I already found it. What's that? Peace and quiet. After she drove away, I went back to packing. By evening, I'd loaded everything I wanted to keep into my truck and a small trailer I'd rented. The house looked empty and echoing, but also clean and ready for its new owners. I was locking up the workshop when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Tom Calder? Who's asking? My name is Vincent Moretti. I think your brother owes me some money. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I kept my voice steady. I wouldn't know anything about that. Really? Because Danny seems to think you might be willing to help him out with his financial obligations. Danny was wrong. That's disappointing. Family should stick together, don't you think? Mr. Moretti, I don't know you, and I don't know anything about my brother's business dealings. If Danny owes you money, that's between you and him. The thing is, Mr. Calder, Danny seems to have disappeared, and when people owe me money and then disappear, I sometimes have to get creative about collecting what I'm owed. That sounds like a problem for law enforcement. Moretti laughed. Law enforcement. That's funny. You know what else is funny? I heard you just sold your house for a nice profit, $345,000. That's a lot of money. It's also none of your business. Maybe not, but if Danny doesn't surface soon, I might have to expand my definition of family responsibility. Mr. Moretti, let me be very clear about something. I don't know where my brother is, I don't have any way to contact him, and I have no intention of paying his debts. If you or anyone working for you comes near me or my property, I'll call the police. The police. Right. Well, Mr. Calder, I hope for your sake that Danny turns up soon. The line went silent. I stood there in my empty driveway, holding my phone and thinking about Vincent Moretti and his creative collection methods. Then I walked back into the house, went to the kitchen junk drawer, and pulled out the business card Detective Ray Kowalski had given me 2 years ago when someone had broken into my workshop. Detective Kowalski. Ray, it's Tom Calder. We met a couple years ago when someone broke into my workshop. Sure, I remember. What's going on, Tom? I just got a threatening phone call from someone claiming my brother owes him money. Guy named Vincent Moretti. Vinny Moretti? Yeah, we know Vinny. What kind of threats? He suggested that if my brother doesn't pay his debts, he might have to get creative about collecting from family members. Did he threaten you specifically? Not in so many words, but the implication was clear. Where's your brother now? I don't know. He left town a few days ago, and I haven't heard from him since. Tom, I'm going to give you some advice. If Vinny Moretti calls you again, don't engage with him. Hang up and call me immediately. And if you see any unfamiliar cars in your neighborhood or notice anyone following you, call 911. Is it that serious? Vinny's not usually a violent guy, but he's persistent, and he doesn't like to write off debts. How much does your brother owe him? $200,000. Ray whistled. That's a lot of money, even for Vinny. Tom, you might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while, just until this blows over. I'm already planning to leave town. The house sold and I close next week. Good. The farther you get from this situation, the better. After I hung up, I walked through the empty house one more time, turning off lights and checking locks. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if stretching out the final minutes I would ever spend here. Each switch I flipped felt symbolic. Each lock I tested a small act of closure. The house echoed differently now, stripped of furniture and voices, reduced to footsteps and memory. Tomorrow I'd start looking for a new place to live, somewhere far enough away that Vincent Moretti and Danny's problems couldn't follow me. Somewhere anonymous. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere that didn't already know my history. But tonight, I was going to sleep in my childhood bedroom one last time, in the house my grandfather had built, and my father had loved, and I was about to leave forever. The room hadn't changed much over the years. The same slanted ceiling, the same faint outline on the wall where posters had once hung, the same window that used to frame summer mornings and winter storms. It smelled faintly of dust and old wood, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought about Jennifer's question. Had I really won anything here? The question lingered, refusing to settle into a simple answer. It circled my thoughts, digging deeper the longer I lay there. I'd kept my house from being stolen, but I'd lost my marriage and my relationship with my brother. I'd protected my financial assets, but I'd destroyed my family. I'd gotten my revenge, but I wasn't sure it felt as satisfying as I'd expected. There was no surge of triumph, no sense of victory lap. Just a quiet accounting of losses and trade-offs I hadn't fully understood when I set everything in motion. Then I thought about Vincent Moretti's phone call, and about Danny running from people who might hurt him, and about Jennifer having to start over with nothing but 2 suitcases and a failed real estate career. None of us had come out untouched. Everyone had paid something, whether they deserved it or not. And I realized that maybe winning wasn't about feeling satisfied. Maybe winning was just about being the last one standing when everything fell apart. Maybe survival itself was the only prize left once all the illusions were stripped away. I closed my eyes and listened to the house settling around me, creaking and sighing like an old friend saying goodbye. The sounds were comforting and sad at the same time, the language of a place that had held generations of lives. In a week, someone else would be listening to these sounds. Someone else would be starting their life in the place where mine had ended. But that was okay. Some stories have to end before new ones can begin, and I was ready for a new story. The closing went smoothly. Rebecca handled most of the paperwork while I signed documents and shook hands with the new owners, a young couple with a baby on the way, who looked at the house the same way I'd looked at Jennifer 8 years ago, like it was the beginning of everything good that was going to happen to them. Their excitement was contagious and fragile, the kind that only exists at the very start of something. I wished them luck and meant it. Whatever happened next for them was theirs to discover, just as whatever came next for me was finally mine alone. 3 days later, I was driving west on Interstate 40 with everything I owned loaded in the back of my truck. I had no specific destination in mind, just a general direction and enough money to take my time figuring out what came next. Mile after mile disappeared beneath the tires, each one putting more distance between me and the life I'd outgrown. My phone rang as I crossed the state line. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. I already knew instinctively that answering wouldn't change anything. 2 hours later, I stopped for gas and checked the message. "Tom, it's Danny. I heard about the house. I heard you got $345 for it. Tom, those people are still looking for me, and I'm running out of places to hide. I know you're angry, but I'm your brother. I need help. Please call me back." I deleted the message without writing down the number. I didn't hesitate. I didn't replay it. I didn't argue with myself. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some family bonds, once broken, can't be repaired. And some people have to learn the hard way that actions have consequences, even when those consequences hurt the people you love. I got back in my truck and kept driving west, toward whatever was waiting for me on the other side of the mountains. Behind me, the sun was setting on a life I'd never have to live again. Ahead of me, the road stretched out like a promise I was finally